Have you ever noticed that some people seem to have a sort of social cheat code? They walk into a room, and within 5 minutes, they've made 3 new friends, landed a business lead, and somehow made everyone feel like the most important person in the building. Meanwhile, the rest of us are hovering near the snack table, checking our phones, and wondering if we have something in our teeth. We like to tell ourselves these people are just born with it, that charisma is some unteachable genetic gift. But back in 1936, a man named Dale Carnegie decided to prove us wrong. He realized that human interaction isn't a mystery. It's a system of predictable levers and pulleys. If you know which ones to pull, you can navigate almost any social situation with surgical precision. This is the core of How to Win Friends and Influence People, a book that has survived nearly a century because despite our smartphones and AI, the human hardware, our egos, our fears, and our deep-seated need to be noticed hasn't changed one bit. Imagine you're standing in front of a mirror. When you look at your reflection, what's the first thing you notice? Usually it's a flaw, a hair out of place or a blemish. We are naturally, biologically obsessed with ourselves. Carnegie's first major pillar in this book is the radical idea of turning that mirror into a window. He argues that the biggest mistake we make in handling people is kicking the beehive. When we criticize or condemn someone, we aren't just pointing out a fact. We are launching a heat-seeking missile at their ego. Think about the last time someone told you that you were wrong. Did you think, gee, thanks for the enlightenment? Probably not. Your brain likely went into full defensive mode, building a wall of justifications to protect your self-image. Carnegie suggests that if you want to gather honey, you can't kick the hive. This isn't just about being nice. It's about understanding that humans are creatures of emotion, not logic. When you criticize, you create a resentment that can last a lifetime, even if the criticism is technically true. The book challenges us to replace that knee-jerk judgment with a relentless curiosity. Why is this person acting this way? What hidden pressure are they under? By shifting from judge to investigator, you gain the influence that anger usually destroys. Moving deeper into the framework, let's talk about the sweetest sound. Carnegie highlights a psychological quirk that we often overlook: the sound of our own name. Imagine you're at a loud, crowded party. Music is blasting. Dozens of conversations are happening at once, and it's all just a blur of noise. But then, across the room, someone says your name. Your brain instantly locks on. It's like a laser beam, cutting through the fog. Carnegie points out that to any person, their name is the most important sound in any language. In our modern, digital world, we've become lazy. We use "hey, dude," or "buddy," or we just jump straight into our request. But Carnegie argues that by failing to remember and use names, we are missing the easiest way to build a bridge. When you use someone's name, you're signaling that they aren't just a cog in your machine. They are a distinct, respected individual. It's a tiny investment with a massive emotional dividend. And this ties directly into his next big idea: the power of being a good listener. Visualize a conversation where you're talking to someone who is clearly just waiting for their turn to speak. Their eyes are glazed over, they're nodding rhythmically. And as soon as you pause for breath, they dive in with their own story. How does that make you feel? Small, irrelevant. Now, imagine the opposite. Someone who asks you a deep, follow-up question and leans in, genuinely wanting to know the why behind your story. Carnegie suggests that the easiest way to become a good conversationalist is to stop talking. He shares stories of people who were hailed as brilliant talkers simply because they listened intently while the other person did 90% of the work. It's a paradox to be interesting. You must be interested. But what happens when things get messy? What do you do when you're in an argument? This is where Carnegie gets truly counterintuitive. He tells us that you can't win an argument. Imagine a boxing match. If you win by knocking the other person out and proving they're an idiot, they'll leave the ring feeling humiliated and resentful. Their opinion hasn't changed. It's just gone underground, protected by a layer of spite. You've won the battle of words, but lost the war of influence. The book teaches us to avoid the no trap. Once a person says no, their pride demands they stay consistent with it. Instead, Carnegie advocates for the Socratic method, getting the other person to say yes from the very beginning. You find the common ground, however small it is, and build from there. It's like a psychological zipper. Once you get the first few teeth aligned, the rest follows smoothly. If you're wrong, and let's be honest, we often are, Carnegie's advice is to admit it quickly and emphatically. It's like pulling the fuse out of a bomb. When you admit your fault before the other person can point it out, you rob them of their ammunition and often trigger their own desire to be magnanimous and forgiving. Now, let's get into the critique, because this is where things get interesting. Some people look at Dale Carnegie's work and see a manual for manipulation. They argue that if you're performing these techniques, using names intentionally or smiling on command, you're being fake. There is a valid concern here. If you use these tools as a way to hack people for your own gain without any genuine empathy, you're essentially a social con artist. However, the transformative layer of this book is that these techniques often lead to genuine change in the practitioner. If you force yourself to look for the good in someone so you can give them honest and sincere appreciation, you eventually start seeing the good in people automatically. The book isn't necessarily asking you to fake an emotion. It's asking you to change your focus. The modern world is increasingly cynical, and Carnegie's 1930s era optimism can sometimes feel a bit Pollyanna. He doesn't spend much time on what to do with truly toxic people or how to navigate complex power dynamics, where being nice might get you stepped on. It's a book written for a world of face-to-face business and community, and it doesn't always account for the nuances of digital communication, where tone is easily lost. Despite that, the core philosophy holds up because it's based on human biology. We are social animals who crave status and belonging. Carnegie's work is essentially a guide on how to provide that status and belonging to others, which in turn makes them want to help us. It's a virtuous cycle of ego management. So, what's the final verdict? How to Win Friends and Influence People is not just a business book, it's a manual for emotional intelligence. It should be required reading for anyone who has to interact with other humans, which, last I checked, is all of us. Whether you're a student trying to navigate a group project, a manager leading a team, or just someone who wants to have a better relationship with your barista, Carnegie's lessons are timeless. But don't just take my word for it. Let's put this into practice with a 24-hour actionable step. Today, I want you to try the No Correction Challenge. In every conversation you have for the next 24 hours, resist the urge to correct someone, even if they are factually wrong about something trivial. If they say a movie came out in 2015, and you know it was 2016, let it go. Instead, focus on the point they're trying to make. Watch how the energy of the conversation stays positive when you stop being the fact checker and start being the supporter. You'll realize that being right is often the enemy of being liked. Dale Carnegie's legacy isn't about tricking people into liking you. It's about realizing that every person you meet is fighting a hard battle and is desperate for a little bit of recognition. When you become the person who provides that recognition, the world opens up for you. I recommend getting this book to fully understand the author's perspective. If you found this deep dive helpful, make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications.